us your name and could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Paul Seaborn. I'm an assistant professor at the Daniels College of Business, which is the business school at the University of Denver.
Yeah.
So we're at a private school just in the suburbs of Metro Denver.
Well, in full disclosure, I did a couple degrees here, so it's really cool that we've connected. So I'm traveling through Denver, and you and I have talked in the past, and what I want to talk about today, and we'll talk about other things down the road, but today, a conversation I just wanted to have with you is, let's rewind a year or two ago, and you were developing a curriculum, and why don't you grab it from there, and then maybe I'll ask you some questions, but bring me up to speed.
Sure, and I think the story really starts in 2011. I moved here from Canada. I'd never lived in the U.S. or in Colorado, okay. And so I think when everything happened around legalization in our state, folks who had been here a long time maybe didn't see it as quite as big a deal, but as a newcomer, it really stood out to me as something of interest. So that got me interested. I brought in some guest speakers. I started to network and really get to know some of the pioneers in the Colorado industry. And then at a certain point, it really seemed to me like a university in this location would be doing a disservice to our students if we didn't offer them some sort of window into the industry. Not that we're a trade school for cannabis, but we produce business leaders, and a lot of them want to stay in Colorado, and it's really inevitable that they'll either interact with this industry or potentially lead it. And so that was really the motivation. And yes, as you said, I guess it was 2 or 3 years ago, I started floating the idea around, and it definitely generated some interesting comments and questions and concerns.
Spirited conversation, if I know good old DU.
That's right, and so I guess 2016 in the spring I got the approval, and in university timeframes that meant I could teach it the following spring in 2017, and so I've now done the course twice. I'll teach it, I'll double and teach it 2 times in the next academic year, and really, I think it's been well received by all sides, and I think we now have a lot more understanding and support and interest as opposed to skepticism and maybe caution. So
this is a legitimate industry.
Well, I think that's something that people are still coming to grips with. But certainly what I see is it has elements of every core business challenge that we would teach our students in intro accounting and marketing and finance. So there's that where business it's still a business, right. And then on the other hand, it has unique aspects in every one of those areas that someone who doesn't know the cannabis space and the rules and regulations and how Colorado differs from Washington and California would miss the boat completely. And so the goal of our course is really to bring those two together, core business skills that often our students have developed at another previous course, and then layer on the cannabis setting and what makes it unique and different and challenging.
And before we get into the details of the course, this would not be horticulture or agriculture. And what I'm really trying to say is, out in California, you can basically get a 4-year degree in winemaking or growing grapes, and I mean that sincerely. Yeah. You're not involved in agriculture and lab work.
No, not at all. And I think that just reflects the nature of our university and our business school. So the skills that we teach in other settings are really the core managerial leadership skills, not so much technical and trade. And so when it comes to cannabis, we'll look after the managerial leadership policy. And I think there are lots of other institutions, both nonprofit, traditional universities, and for-profit that are coming up with all sorts of ways to help people build their toolkit. So we're just part of that ecosystem. And a real challenge here was just understanding enough that you could convince key people at the university that a course was a good thing, and they had lots of questions about what will go on in this course, not just around the skills and the tasks, but kind of what guests will come in, what's the tone, what's the message. And so I think
I'm sure there was.
We've learned a lot in the last 2 years, and I feel very proud of what we've been able to do.
So let's talk about the course. When I went to the University of Denver, it was a quarterly system.
Still is,
okay, and help me remember, is that 10 weeks?
It's exactly 10 weeks.
Okay. So from day one to the final exam, walk me through your course.
Yeah, it evolved a little from version 1 to version 2, but the way I describe it is we need to start with the foundation of the history. And actually, that's probably one of the areas that's most impactful for students is to understand how this plant became illegal. All the things around the 30s and 40s and Anslinger and all these interesting maybe less grounded in science events than people might have expected and probably have never studied. And then layer on a layer of understanding the legal status, both state and federal, and all the regulatory infrastructure. So those two things are really a foundation for the course. And then once we're up to speed on that, we can really jump into what's unique across the different business functions, finance, accounting, marketing, what's really maybe a universal problem of all businesses that's also prevalent here in the cannabis space. And we do a lot of that not with a great textbook that we pull off the shelf because no one's written it yet and I haven't gotten around to it. But what we really do is leverage the industry here in Colorado. So I've had great access to whatever guest speakers I want, whether it is in industry, government, the legal profession, and the students learn from firsthand from those people.
Do you take the student back in Washington, and I know it's an industry term, but do you also kind of take them from the seed to sale experience, sort of the supply chain?
Yeah, because I think a big eye-opener for me and probably others in our institution is that our students don't actually know that much about this industry, right? They might assume young people have this all figured out.
Some of them learn by doing. Yes. In the old days.
And that's
but I know what you mean.
Yeah, and even still, you only really see it as a consumer. And so,
right.
To your point, it's really that full supply chain from
the
genetics and the cultivation and all that, sustainability, innovation, efficiency, the manufacturing piece where a fairly standard plant goes off in 100 different directions. And then you get to retail where it's really a branding and marketing and an efficiency play. So part of that understanding the business model is understanding those steps, and that's where I think students are learning things that they would never see just as a consumer. And we do a field trip to manufacturing facility, and they see they see everything that happens behind the scenes, and that's not something the average person gets to do either. So.
That actually raises a good question. Off camera, I told you I went to grad school at night and had a day job, and I learned so much and certainly learned how to study. Is your curriculum a night curriculum for field trips and the adult learner? Or is it day or both? Or
so it's currently day. We have a kind of standard 2 to 4 Tuesday, Thursday slot that a lot of our MBA graduate electives would fall in. So up till now, I've taught the course in that slot, but I've also opened it to undergrads, and we've had a pretty even mix.
I didn't know that. So you brought a curriculum out at the grad level.
Yeah. But it's ended up being a mix of undergrad, grad, both offerings. There's lots of interest in me doing it day, night, weekend, and every other time, and so we'll roll those out, I think, gradually as we go. But we've been able to do those visits during that slot. It's actually a great time to go because if we did go in the night, most of our Denver facilities are not active in production, into the evenings. So. Right.
Other than you could get a private tour, but I understand. With the course itself, my sense, and I've tracked your success. You and I talked a little over a year ago. You've enjoyed outsized media coverage, is my recollection. You've had some coverage. Talk to me about that some of the recognition you've had in coverage. And outsized coverage is an asset. That's a good thing.
And it really was, I guess, if you build it, they will come, because there was no media campaign, but word spread pretty quickly. And I've talked to folks from Europe and probably half of the U.S. states and most of Canada, and I think partly because this course is really a business of marijuana course. That's Correct. The title. We may actually call it business of cannabis at some point as the tide turns here. And we're a state that we're slow to kind of get to that terminology. But other schools that have taken initiatives, they've had their own approach. You've got a University of Michigan offering a much more hands-on cultivation degree, which is a real milestone, but a different approach. And I think also Colorado's position, kind of being a fast mover as an industry, reflects back on what we can do in the course. So it's been a topic of a lot of interest, from the media, I would say, for one, from prospective students who may or may not know about prerequisites and enrolling at the university, but all sorts of folks that would love to be part of this learning experience. And then, I think it's really opened up some interesting conversations when our students go out in the world. I know they have this course on their LinkedIn profile, and whether they actually end up working in the industry, they have something to talk about, particularly if they apply for jobs in other parts of the country. And so far it's a little bit unique, but I can't imagine other courses popping up that mimic it. It would be unlikely for that not to happen very quickly.
So. Final question would be the networking in the industry, meeting people. So here's been my experience is that back in Seattle, the meetup format is popular, meetup.com, and they have the marijuana technology meetup, or actually we do default to the word cannabis there. So, and that's the fourth Thursday of the month, standard stuff. What's interesting is I've been fairly good about going to those to learn this industry, and it is a lot of students who probably don't have the benefit of this curriculum, but they have an interest, right? So it's a lot of people who are job hunters come to these meetups, and the University of Washington is where it's hosted, and so number one, do you have a similar motion here? And number two, is it vehicles like that in terms of how you met people in the industry? Have you gone to different symposiums and meetups? And go ahead.
Yeah, so I think for our students, the course is a great way for them to not walk into those environments overwhelmed or maybe intimidated. They probably, a lot of them wouldn't go if they didn't have a little bit of time to get their head around this industry. So we did some great events this past quarter. We have a facility in Denver similar to a WeWork, a shared workspace kind of place, but it's specific to the cannabis industry. So it's called Cultivated Synergy. They're downtown in a pretty happening area. And so we had the founders of that business, because it is a business, come and talk to the students. And then a few weeks later, they went down and attended an event where some incubator folks were there. Execs were pitching some, assessment of the market and giving advice to entrepreneurs. And I think we kind of gave them that little push in where they were really able to really mix and really add value to that discussion. That's kind of the first side. For me personally, I think there's just a natural connections that happen when you live in a state like Colorado. So it could be a parent of one of my children who goes to the same school, or an adult that I play Saturday morning basketball with, or lots of connections from my professor colleagues or folks that I come across. Lots of events, conferences. But I think that part, I would say to some extent it's similar to other industries. The key difference, and my students almost teach this to themselves when they go and analyze the industry. So few of our companies in Colorado think of themselves as direct competitors, right? They're really, at this time,
I would agree.
They have a shared interest in building an industry. And so, yes, they compete at the margin for a customer's dollar, but there's so much more in it for them together. And so I think that really changes the nature of networking. It's a much more welcoming, supportive industry. People don't see it as it's going to be you or me and one of us is going to succeed. They see it as let's help each other and let's kind of get through this very interesting period. And there's a hope that there's something bigger on the far end when we get to an industry that's not bounded by the borders of Colorado physically and financially. And so I think that's a really interesting experience for the students to see industry where we work together, we cheer on each other's success, and we do a lot more in collaboration than we do in competition.
Yeah, and we'll pick it up there in 6 months. As I indicated to you, I come to Colorado a couple of times a year. So when I come back in 6 months, let's talk about the industry. Let's talk about borders, cross-border commerce, maybe even touch on the federal government aspects and banking. But let's do that next time. I appreciate you telling me about the landmark course you have, and I'm able to share that with the 411 on 420 viewers, and off to summer vacation, my friend.
I'm heading to my home country of Canada, so I'll have plenty to tell you about that when we chat next. And we've talked a lot in my class of where's this industry going, and to me right now it's the 3 C's. So no offense to your Washington listeners, but we've got Colorado, which I know and I'm embedded in. Sure. California, which is the elephant to be in the room, and to me Canada, where they have a national very logical system, and they're going to be the world's leader in a lot of ways very quickly. So those 3 C's are really of interest to me, and always great to learn more about Washington and Oregon and other places as well. So,
no, I like it. All right, well, we better get you to the airport, my friend.
Right. Thanks.